Hi, this is Michael Jones, Chairman and CEO of Caravel Concepts. Welcome to Market Insights, our weekly commentary on financial markets. Let's get started. On this week's Market Insights, we thought we would tackle one of the most common questions that we get about the financial markets and our commentary on those financial markets. What do we mean when we say that the Fed is printing a lot of money? How does that work, and how does it impact financial markets and the U.S. economy? Now, let me give a word of caution before I start on this. If you're an economist or an expert on money and banking, just tune out now. My goal in this is not to help some economics student pass their money and banking exam. My goal is to help ordinary investors understand the most important economic policy that's impacting financial markets right now. That means that while everything I say is conceptually right, you're going to find it's fairly oversimplified, and that's on purpose, to make the explanations very clear for people who are not going to spend days immersed in the details of how the Fed interacts with the banking system. So, with that as a caveat, what is the Fed? The Fed is essentially the place where money gets created in the U.S. economy. Congress has delegated that power to the Federal Reserve. How does it work? Well, in the old days, it was easy to understand. If you want to understand how we helped finance the Civil War by printing money, we literally printed money. We set up printing presses, we created what were called greenbacks, and a lot of paper flooded out into the economy to help pay for bullets and beans and the soldiers' salaries. Fast forward to the current computerized age, and that's not how things work anymore.
SpongeBob, we're not cavemen. We have technology.
How the Fed prints money now is, think about how wonderful your life would be if you could decide how much money was in your checking account. Essentially, that is the power that the Fed has. They have what is the equivalent of a checking account, and here's where all the professional economists are starting to squirm because this is an oversimplified example of the relationship between the Fed and the primary dealer system. But essentially, the Fed has checking accounts at some of the major banking institutions in the economy. Think Citigroup, JP Morgan, Goldman Sachs. And when the Fed decides that they need to print some money, they call up, say, Goldman Sachs. And they say, Goldman Sachs, I want to buy $100 billion in bonds. Now, why would they want to do that? Well, if they buy $100 billion in bonds, then the price of bonds will go up and interest rates will go down. That's a pretty powerful lever for the economy, keeping interest rates low. So you can see why the Fed might occasionally want to do that. Now, when they do that, they call up Goldman Sachs, they say, I want to buy $100 billion in bonds. Well, Fed Chairman Powell on the phone, I'm sure it's not Fed Chairman Powell, but you get the point. He's on the phone with the kid at Goldman Sachs, and that poor kid, well, this is Goldman Sachs. There are no poor kids at Goldman Sachs. The rich but uncomfortable kid at Goldman Sachs has to tell Chairman Powell, Mr. Powell, you don't have any money in your account. And Fed Chairman Powell says, why don't you check again? Poof. Oh my gosh, there's $100 billion in the Fed's account. Where did it come from? The Fed just created it. This is the magic of the Federal Reserve printing press. They get to decide how much money is in their checking account. Now that the $100 billion has magically appeared in the Fed's checking account, that kid at Goldman Sachs can say, all right, we'll go out and buy that $100 billion for you right away, Mr. Powell. Now, here is where the $100 billion stops being just an entry in a computer and becomes a powerful impact on financial markets and the overall economy. Because when that $100 billion goes out and is used to buy $100 billion in bonds, well, the people who own those bonds now don't have that asset. They don't have the bonds anymore. The Fed owns them. They now have $100 billion in cash. $100 billion in cash that just a few minutes ago didn't exist. This is an extra $100 billion that is in the economy, and it has to go somewhere. These people used to own bonds. Now they have cash. Maybe they'll go out and buy more bonds. That will help keep interest rates low. That will help the government finance giant budget deficits. And some of that money is going to go into equities. Some of that money will go into real estate. Some of it will go into commodities. As the Fed keeps this process going, as they put more money into their checking account, as they buy more bonds, they inject more and more newly created dollars into financial markets and into the overall economy. You can see how this can inflate asset prices, how it can keep stock markets healthy. Thanks again for tuning in to Market Insights. We hope you found it interesting and informative. If you'd like more of our research, you can subscribe to our YouTube channel below, and you can find additional publications at caravelconcepts.com. Thanks.